It's your boy Mike Truth, aka Boogie McCab. Today, you guys can call me Boogie, and I am live with my co-host Ms.
LA Wade. Nice to meet you all. Nice to see you all. We have a guest on our phone. His name is Camille, and we actually met through Instagram. Where we didn't meet. He just he sends a lot of different things to me through direct message around the state of Black people. And in this case, it was in the state of the Black woman. So I just thought, with our show being about the exploitation of Black women, it seemed very timely what had occurred in New York City. Could you talk to that, Camille?
Yes, absolutely. I'd like to greet everyone in the greeting words of peace. I don't know your subscriptions in life, but I'd like to greet everyone, the whole diaspora and the Black community with the greeting words of Assalamu Alaikum and hope to have peace and Black power. I'm greatly honored and I appreciate the opportunity to share what is going on, what's transpiring in actually Poughkeepsie, New York. And I want to make sure I have to actually mention. You guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Can you hear him? Shannon, I'm going to look to you because you're in the room, so you would be able to give me the yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, she gave a thumbs up. Dre says yes online. Okay.
It's unfortunate I can't be on live with you, but I'm working on that with my video camera.
Okay.
But, what has happened in Poughkeepsie, New York, Monday the 10th, and I know it's the first podcast I've been with them. So if I'm a little bit here and there with it, pardon me, bear with me.
Oh, don't worry. I'm worse than you.
Let me give you a more formal introduction. I like to go by the name of Brother Camille. I am a servant. I am a student of the most honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I found the teachings in the New York State Correctional Facility, although I knew of the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan before then. But I actually was acclimated into the teachings in what I would consider a dark period in my life, but it was also the most awakening and enlightening period of my life, where I found the teachings in the most life-giving with Elijah Muhammad. So, at this date and time, I have testimony like anybody else, but I'll get right to the chase. I'm originally out of South Carolina. I've been living in New York over 20 years, 41 years of age. Where I'm at is I'm in Dutchess County, New York. This is about 35, 40 minutes from New York City. We're connected by the train, actually. But in this county, on March 10th, we had two of our young sisters by the name of Jalissa Dawkins and Jamila Barnett, okay? And they were assaulted by the police, for lack of better words. One of the sisters there was a fight going on prior, okay? There was a fight going on. It was after school hours, a lot of kids getting out. And there was a fight going on with a young lady who was being attacked. She was being jumped. And these two young sisters had nothing to do with the matter, but they did. One of them knew the young lady being attacked, and she went to sit by her side after the attack was over to make sure that she was all right. In fact, to make sure that she was breathing. She was attacked with wounds and everything. So the police got there, and they told her to leave her friend's side, and also that the language wasn't good language from what I hear, and also the sister who seen that her sister was there helping her friend out was immediately snatched as she approached the officer. She was snatched and slammed to the ground. What you don't see is the other young lady who was sitting with the friend. You don't see her being accosted because it happened in a real short clip. And but it happened before the other sister was actually grabbed and slammed to the ground. The mother was present. Ms. Lynch was present, and this is a fresh matter. So what we're doing is, I feel like a lone soldier out here, family. I'm not in an area where you have too many that get satisfied. So I'll say that. So they're not really too responsive. But what's happened is the police chief, Thomas Patton, has brought charges on the two young ladies, not only for obstructing justice, trying to charge them with a resisting arrest and bringing them into family court. So it's it's a real ugly situation where it's going to call for I think attention and mention and notice abroad, just due to the fact these are not these are preteens. One is a teenager and one is even that. But whatever fight power do we have? And this is why I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to address this through your social media platform, because this is the tool that we have to actually affect this situation, to bring notice to it. Okay? So, I hope I wasn't too long with that.
No.
You guys heard everything I communicated. Okay.
We appreciate you sharing this story with us and to bringing it to light. Is there an organized event that we can circulate or send out a link towards some information towards what you're doing, so we can share it now on the platform?
Yeah. So there's a sister by the name of Vanessa Green, who's she's been boots on the ground for a while. She's just been working in the other community. We haven't had the direct chance to work on things together, except for things like this. This is something that I respond to because I work a lot with the schools in the district. I work a lot with the kids in the district.
Okay.
And I'm trying to help change some of the curriculum.
Right.
But I do have. It's gonna be. It's gonna have to. The link will be VMG 78, and that's the Instagram VMG 7080.
Can you give me coordinates, like as if you were on a plane? It's V. Did you say V as in Victor?
Oh yes. V as in Victor. M as in Master, or
yeah.
And G as in Great.
As in great.
Yes. G as in giraffe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So VMG.
7880.
7880. 7880. Okay.
Yeah, and I also I also would
This is an IG, correct?
This is the IG, yes, and I'll send you. What I'll do is I'll send you there's an actual. We have a meeting set up for Monday at Civic Center in Poughkeepsie, New York. What I'll do is the link is www.
Yeah.
Okay, callblackline.com.
Callblackline.com.
Yeah, and it's a slash with one of those funny symbols there.
Okay, Dre says he got it.
Okay, yes, and that's Sister Vanessa, who works out of the area. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Newburgh, New York, but
well, we Marcel. So Camille, just so you know, Boogie and myself are in Toronto, Canada. We have people from people are in the room that are here from Florida, from Los Angeles. There are some people from New York, specifically Staten Island, on the line. I don't know where Vet and all the other people are from, but through our own networks, hey Kinte, we'll be able to share your links that you've shared with us, and spread the word and hope that something can come out of this necessary work, which kind of is a great segue into what it is that we want to talk about today. Where can we see the video? So the video that you direct messaged me, who were the people that posted that video?
Those are my videos. I do have it. It's not posted to my YouTube, but I did throw that right to the Instagram of the Brother Camille.
Yeah. So if you follow Brother Camille,
yes, Brother Camille.
and it's Kamil.
Yes.
We'll post that as well. You have to put the Brother. Hey Kinte. So we're just adding that to our because what happens is when you come into the chat, Camille, people can see us, and then there are people that watch along the sidelines, and so we share information that way also. Hey Tanya. So that's what's happening. So we're having this conversation. You're free to stay on my phone and continue the conversation. and if you want to join in the conversation, that's fine. We're talking today about the exploitation of Black women. So this was kind of a part of that. I think it's something that I personally, for obvious reasons, being a Black woman, strikes so many different chords for me. And I have wonderful friends like Boogie here, my co-host, my boy Fax in the background, who just remains, incognito. But we were having, I'm laughing, Camille, because one of our co-hosts or one of our engineer actually said, "Is LA Black? Wait a minute, LA's Black?" Anyway, he's always teasing, and he said he just sabotages my conversation because I'll read what he says and it will throw me completely off. And while it's funny, this topic isn't actually really funny to me. And so I would appreciate if we gave a little bit more attention to the cause, because I posted some things on our IG page, on the Elephant Room page, and some of the feedback that I got was that Black women are choosing to be exploited, and that it isn't actually an outside exploitation. And my first reaction for that was, I was kind of upset, and I called him Kanye. And the person was offended by me calling him Kanye with the choice conversation. But to be honest, I didn't really consider the fact that there is a level of some agency, at least currently, but I know that it comes from an intergenerational trauma. And I'm not trying to make excuses for women out there who are putting themselves out there like that. Mm-hmm. It's just that we can't look at it specifically in that context. Dre, what is he saying? Why the hell are the police allowed to do ish like that to children? But if a parent spanks their kids, the Children's Aid Society is called. He says that video is freaking upsetting. That's to you, Brother Camille. So what I'm trying to get at with our first question, or with the first thing that we want to kind of tackle, is how much agency is involved when a woman is exploited. And when we look at Hottentot Venus, I don't know if you're all aware who that Hottentot Venus is from the picture on our ad, but do you want to talk to that? Because I feel like I'm talking a lot.
Oh no, it's okay. It's like so Hottentot Venus was this Black woman from South Africa. Her name was Sarah Barton. Yes, and she was put on display all throughout Europe, like for her body parts. So she has a like, so for her backside, and just like her body was just basically they put on display to showcase as if she was some kind of I guess relic or whatnot. And
well, they said that they were doing it for research reasons, and people were allowed to touch her genitals. They were inspecting her behind, but she was also promised wealth in Europe as a result of going with these people. She wasn't just snatched and consciously enslaved. This would be seen in the eyes of the person on my Instagram as somebody who was making a choice to go and work for her money. And the work that she was doing just happened to also exploit her. And when you look at how that was in relation to all of these music videos and all of the women kind of like being really sexually explicit in those videos, you have to wonder, is there a difference? Is there agency? Was she wrong for wanting to go and make that money and try to make something different for herself? Now, keep in mind, we're having this conversation with the idea that Boogie, myself, and Fax have already gone through this whole conversation, which I wish we just saved for now. So I'm emotionally already depleted from having this conversation because I kind of see where it goes. But I am interested in what you have to say. Shannon, what do you think about the Hottentot Venus and the modern day Venuses?
I mean, I don't know if there's really a huge comparison, yet there is. This was she was born in 1770. So it's not as if she had a whole lot of choice. And of course, everybody, because I'm one of those people, of course she had a choice. What was her alternative? And was her alternative greater than the choice that she made? Answer simply no. Today's Venus, in essence, there's levels to it. I mean, there are people who are human trafficked. There are people who are pimped. There are people who, reality TVs of the world, who are exploited but enjoy it, so to speak. And it may be their persona or how they're acting, but then that gives other people permission to do the same. So it's almost like, where is your moral compass in that? Because yeah, you're making money portraying this person, but now everyone's watching you act a fool and degrade one another and call each other out of your names and wear close to nothing. And so there are so many different levels to what we see today. And some of that is perpetuated by society, and given by the masses to say it's okay. And some of it is ourselves. I mean, we can't always be the victim when we know better.
Yeah. When I think about the agency aspect and exploiting myself for the dollar, it makes me think about a whole bunch of white women that can present themselves in any way they want and call it empowerment. You know, it's their bodies. They have the right to do with it what they want. But somehow that doesn't translate to the Black female body. So what is the agency really is, and are we trying to understand ourselves through the eyes of our oppressor and think that the things that we do is equal and so and can be seen as equal?
That's a very valid point, because that's the thing. This conversation is like I want to know more insight from the women that are in the room. In which ways, basically, like, do you feel you are being, in a sense, exploited or not exploited? Like, what does that even mean to you when you hear Black women being exploited? Like, I mean, is it because, like, when you listen to just her story and just everything in general, so the construct of us, our ancestors being brought here, and then just throughout history in general, women just being, I guess, basically just objectified and almost seen as second class in a sense, right?
100%.
Like the history of that, and nowadays we're in the era of I guess feminism. Like, how does that clash, like, in this modern day era where you go into the workforce, or just like in your livelihoods? How, I wonder, how does exploitation show up in your lives? For example, Shannon, do you feel like you get exploited as a woman, as a Black woman?
And do you like
it? Do you choose to?
No, I mean, do you like it? Like, for real?
I mean, I think in certain arenas, I would probably say yes. For case in point, when I was a nanny, and this, of course, children, they say and do what they see from experience and parenting. But two of the kids would always ask me questions like I spoke for the entire Black race. And I'm like, first of all, I'm one person. And I'm just one drop in a bigger ocean. Like, we are not all alike. We don't all talk alike. We don't all use the same dialect. We don't all enunciate or pronounce words the same. We don't dress the same. We don't eat the same. We don't all wear glasses. We don't all have natural hair. So I cannot speak for anyone but myself. But usually when they ask questions about Black people, it was in reference to, and even specifically the older one who was a male asked about Black women. He thought that I spoke for all Black women. And I'm like, you're a kid, so I'm not going to hold it against you, but allow me to educate you just a little bit. And yes, there's been some growth there. I don't necessarily think that I like being exploited. I like exposure, and there is a difference to me, and there's a good and a bad of all those things. It depends on what you're being exploited for. I mean, because, if it's a bad exposure, no, I don't like that. And I don't want that. I don't want to be seen as the bad side of who we are based on what media represents. So I represent myself in a light that is good and honorable and has integrity. And you can exploit the hell out of that because I'm okay with that.
Well, to your point, there was this Google ad that they did about Black girl magic, right? And I'm just going to play that for you really quick. What? I can't do it anymore. So then Google puts their name and their stamp on Black Girls Matter. And, you know, they get to say what is Black Girl Magic because they've co-opted it from us yet again. The cultural appropriation of Black women, the exploitation of Black women in a positive light. Is that good or is that also seen as bad? There were two women that have been fighting over the name Black Girl Magic. Two Black women. Well, Black Girls Rock was hers first, and then she went through the process of doing a copyright for Black Girls Magic. And somebody else had already been coined as somebody who was the owner of that, but she didn't go through the process. But neither of these women were addressed when Google co-opted it and put together a nice montage of their of Black women experiences in the positive light. And then at the end of the video, they put up their Google as if to say, for me, when Rihanna, not to digress, but when I saw Rihanna's picture with TMZ stamped on her forehead when she was beaten by Chris Brown, it's kind of like this corporatization and we are owned again. So no matter what our experiences are, we seem to be owned by these corporations that can co-opt our images, our bodies, much like the Hottentot, and be there for the male gaze. I mean, in that picture with Rihanna, her eyes are closed. She doesn't even have the agency to open her eyes and be a part of that. When you see a watermark on someone, it's like she was branded. Mm-hmm. And so now Black Girls Magic has become branded in a sense. And it was a positive video. You know, you could even become moved and emotional that this was a very positive thing. But what is the bigger agenda? And what about that can we own for ourselves? Mm-hmm. What does it make you think, Kinte?
You talking about the Google video?
Yeah, the Google video. Or any of it.
Doesn't make me feel anything. I don't look towards Google for their acceptance. So I don't care what Google does. I care more about what our community, how we view each other. And I'm more concerned about the way that Black men and women relate to each other. So whether Google gives us a thumbs up or not is irrelevant to me. And I feel like any Black person who's looking for somebody outside of our community to give you some sort of thumbs up, I think you're already lost. So I don't care what Google feels like. You know, I feel more like it's about how we define ourselves as Black people than what Google does. Whether you may think it's positive, I don't know. I mean, I got to see the video. I mean, who are we highlighting? You know, I kind of saw it. So, you know, are those people I really want to highlight, you know, as far as representing Black women?
I don't think it's so much that we're looking to Google to validate us. I didn't look to Google to validate me. They just put a video out on the International Women's Day and said, hey, Black women, look. And they put it out there and I was like, oh, okay. But for me, those images, because I've seen some of those videos individually, like the two women talking to Black women, trying to empower us on an Instagram post from a Black woman who put that out there. And then it's like snippets of that video was put into a montage for me to understand my experience. And while I didn't look to them to do that for me, they are informing millions of young Black women that are on Google and think, oh, look how great they are. Look what they did for us.
And the point that...
Go ahead, Fax.
I was just going to say that's a part of when you really look at it, that's a part of corporate branding. Like they're always trying to associate with movements and causes and ideas. What was that? The one with the toxic masculinity that got so much play?
Terry Crews.
Yeah, no, this is the one where the Gillette. That's what I'm thinking about, like the Gillette ad, right? You guys remember that one?
Oh yes.
Yeah. If you look up, if you do a Google search for Gillette, do a Yahoo search. How about that? for Gillette masculinity ad, you'll see like they basically wrap their brand around the idea of changing the dialogue around what masculinity is. So, you know, corporations, they have an agenda. At the end of the day, a corporation is just a business trying to make money. They're trying to create brand loyalty and brand affiliation with popular causes. So, you know, specific to Black people, is this something that we can say is specific to Black people? Google doesn't put out a bunch of ads targeting at Black people, right? But they are going to jump on International Women's Day. They're going to jump on, as Lauren pointed out, a montage of positive Black imagery, and use that as a way to get some brand cachet, right? But is that central to this idea of exploitation and self-exploitation? And I just want to throw one thing out there: is when I think about exploitation, I think about all these housewives of this and that, Beverly Hills City, and people, and because one of the things that's problematic for me is the idea of the money grubbing, selfish, materialistic, over-sexualized Black woman, which I think gets popularized as a trope on some of those types of shows. And that to me is more divisive than the ad from Google. But anyways, you all can comment on that.
And I think kind of to add to that, I find that you're mentioning it becomes exploitation when there's capitalistic gains that are acquired without the group that are being showcased anyways benefiting, in my opinion. Because I find that after they did the ad, if they followed it with some kind of, we've opened a sense of where, you know, we've given opportunities to different Black women or like Afro descendants. Like, then I'd be like, oh, okay. I could see there's some kind of basically, I guess, gains to this. But the fact that they jumped on a slogan that is meant to empower black women, and they just put it out there, and it is basically like attract more recognition for their brand, like in a sense that Google is out here supporting the cause, and like salam and peace to everybody. And it becomes problematic when it's like we're not doing this for ourselves, and there's no financial gains that basically we're getting. So that's where, for me, it becomes very problematic. And yes, that is like pure exploitation, and it happens on so many different levels. It's been happening for centuries. And what is going on now is that, like, I believe that we're just imitating and replicating a cycle that was really, really enforced during like Jim Crow eras and everything, where we were just cattle. So like that mindset now is basically been going on, and I think our women, and I don't want to mansplain a lot. That's why I was like, I'm just kind of letting the conversation go. But
no, don't worry.
I believe that our women basically now have acquired this idea, and not everybody, but has acquired this idea that for survival, I have to show up in a certain way. I have to let certain things happen to me and my body, even if I don't feel comfortable with it. I'm going to allow it to happen for survival. So then, for me, the question now, basically, like I was mentioning to this earlier, it's about us redefining what survival is for us. And because right now, survival, it has everything to do with capitalism. We're doing it all for the money. A lot of people are doing everything for the money. So some women, basically, I have no choice. I'm going to hop on the pole to basically make money. And like, if I could actually just read what Dre wrote, he said it's a part of the breakdown of the Black family. It tells the watchers that it's okay for you, Black women, to be independent, ratchet, money thirsty, and promiscuous. Like, I agree, like, to that point, like 100%.
Talking about the Google thing?
I was just about to say, are we talking about Google? Or we talking about something else?
About exploitation in general. Exploitation can be co-opted to make you feel like it's a positive thing through like via the Google thing, or it can be like the girls popping the coochie in the videos. It can be the woman being knocked down by the police. Black women, this is where the feeling of Black women are just there for people to do what they want to with them. And I'm asking about agency in any of those situations. And in regards to what Dre is saying, I think that it's interesting to also juxtapose that with white female respectability and how they like to position themselves as the moral good, and anything opposite to that is bad. And when Black women try to walk through this life imitating the white woman, it's going to automatically put us at a polarized difference with Black men. To Kinte's point, it is automatically going to destroy the Black family when the Black woman is trying to be independent like the white woman, because we are not equal. And when we try to act like these women, there's a double standard, and we're not calling out that elephant and thinking that we are the same person, and they want to co-opt us to take on their feminism that has nothing to do with us.
But let's be honest though, that thing that we're talking about that's acceptable for white women, that's not inherently African traits. So it's not really. No, it's not. It's really not.
No.
We have what's that when you've been kidnapped and you're like you act like you're kidnapped? Stockholm syndrome. You know, so you find value in being, you know, you want to be like Kim Kardashian and make a sex tape and become a billionaire. I mean, like, you know, that's, you know, that's something to ascribe to be. You know, you're upset because well, what if I want to be a hoe too, and I want the same respect? No, I mean, what is that to fight for? I don't get that mentality of that. I think we have to walk in our own light. And
so what do you suggest they do? Go ahead, Fax.
I was going to say that, like earlier on in our pre-dialogue about this whole topic, one of the things we're talking about is, you're right that we have to have our own path. The white majority has their own path, but their path has been defined largely by themselves. We're having a pathway that's being defined for us. So get the car, get the bling, get the, you know, this whole crass sort of materialism. It's easy to talk about crass materialism when you have 10 generations of wealth accumulation on the backs of stolen land and labor. And that, again, that's not for everybody, but certainly by the dint of being white, you benefit from a system that gives you that advantage. And so here we are late in the race, having 1/10 of the wealth of the dominant group, and without our own sort of economic and social mooring. Who are we? What do we want? What do we need? And redefining our mission. So then we're jumping on saying, all right, well, I want all the stuff that group has. And so you're supporting a cause that's really ironically been built on the past suffering of your ancestors, without defining how you're going to move within that system and what's best for you.
You know what I don't like about the Google thing is, to me, it's like a trinket. It's like they do this shit with us, and we're about to go into a election cycle where they love to do things like, you'll see Beto, whatever his name is, he'll be doing the Dougie with some black hood, and they love to give us stuff that don't really amount to nothing. And what I'm saying is, okay, that was great, Google ad, you know, showing, you know, black girl magic, whatever. But at the end of the day, does it really do anything for us? I don't think so. We need to chase power. We need to chase control of our own communities and our own destiny, and stop wanting some sort of glorification by them.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as I've been listening, this is real juicy, and I can go a lot of places with this. I do understand that what Google is doing is creating attention. I mean, that's what they do. In fact, most of the platforms we use are, you know, the platforms the fact it is. Right attention is more currency. And I do believe, and I know for a fact that we look outside of ourselves for validation. It just so happens there's a lot of work to be done with us as a people. As a people, we have been so damaged and we're so far behind. There's so much pain, and we don't like to talk about the pain. So when you see our sisters on the television and some of our brothers who we're going through this feminization thing, and this is a sad thing. We're picking up so many of the traits of our former colonizers and slave masters. This is what we're doing. All right. And so we look at white as beauty. We've always been taught that the white woman is virtuous. I mean, when they integrated the schools, we got all white teachers. You can barely find a black teacher anywhere. All right. And so this is a sad effort. We're in an epidemic and a crisis, and we're in a race war. All of that sums it up. Like I said, this is real juicy, and this can go a lot of places. But I can say that, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us that when you find no decent women, when you find no decent men, there is no decent women. Meaning that I believe that the man, and solely the man, has to take up the responsibility in the home. He has to be self-accountable. Without any accountability, nothing will change, brothers and sisters. Nothing. I mean, it has to start with the leadership qualities in the home. And how do you want your daughter and your son to treat each other? And how do they receive and act amongst others? It's mannerism. So what you see in the street or in the popularized with television or these what you call reality shows, yeah, they're looking for opportunity. Some of them are not very bright. Okay, and I don't take it. I mean, I'm not a knock on them, but they have an opportunity and they have to feed their family. But the problem is we create no jobs. So if we don't get to some self-creativity, we are going to continue to have this kind of a problem, and the women will continue to act out without any leadership from real men that are willing to put their boots to the ground and do something about it, protect them. Put the camera down, man. Put the camera down. I mean, goddamn. This is why we're in the condition that we're in, and we're accepting a lot of the behavior. So I don't want to take up too much time. That's what I got to say.
Very well.
That's important. What you're talking about is very important because
it's just passion. I just got passion in the outside.
Well, when I put, like I said, I put this a bunch of different things. Actually, I put up a picture of an Asian man with his arms around two African women, holding the breasts of these African women while he was one of them was holding the hands of a child.
He should have beat the shit out of that guy.
Yeah, I mean, that was some of the response on Instagram, is that guy should get his ass kicked. But some people were just saying that, don't blame the Chinese man. Those women chose to do it. And so it gave me the question, are we really in charge of that? And what is the responsibility when these, the music industry, really, women are not in control of the music industry. Right? The music industry is controlled by men, and mostly white men.
White men.
White men.
Right. I was
Jewish men.
White men, but the artist is having to make the same decision at times as the women are to be in the video. Because if their carrot is being held, here, I'm going to make you famous, you can do your music. All you got to do is make your video. Oh, we should do a little bit of like this, a little bit of like that. That man right there, he doesn't have any agency then either, because he's then choosing to put the black woman in the video to have her be the modern Hottentot.
But
you know what it is, though, is that they realize it's all about who you empower, right? So in the beginning of hip hop, the ones that were empowered were the conscious brothers, right? Like Public Enemy and all those guys. So what they started doing was they started empowering the assholes. So once you empower them and make them the standard, then you basically, it just keeps replicating itself. So that's where you give them all the resources, and then what happens is that's what gets put into the culture.
Have you guys ever heard of an artist named Ernest Hogan from the 1920s? Right, I believe it. Yeah, sorry. There was an artist by the name of Ernest Hogan, I believe his name was, from the 1920s, and he made a song called "All Coons Look Alike to Me," and He was fabulously wealthy. And sometimes I'll talk to guys who are in the hip hop industry, and I ask who's your forebearer? Who started your movement? And I always say, I'm like, y'all got to talk to Ernest, because he's the guy that started this whole coonery in music that you guys are basically making money out of still today. And that's for many of these guys, their philosophical guide, right? And you have people who, I mean, look at the people who became popularized in rap. And I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but just the whole idea of guys, many people who glorify drug dealing or were drug dealers. These are people who have no problem hurting people in their own communities on a good day. So to now turn around and make music about it and exploit your community a second time for a higher profit it's a no-brainer.
With the seduction of the image to compound it and to, you know, recruit all of the younger ones that are, you know, they're attracted to that.
Right. So the thing is, so let's be frank. We hold up somebody like Jay-Z, all right, because of the fact that what? Because he has a lot of money, and certainly he's participating in the community. But he's done his fair share of exploiting in our community and profited very greatly from it. Same with, you know, all of these guys. We can go down the list from the T.I.s, any guy who's, you know, the P. Diddy, name them. Everybody has benefited, and now everybody's turning conscious. But nobody's turning away and saying they don't want the money from their authoring money or producing money off of those records. They're not turning all of those funds over to the community. It's easy to get conscious once you got banked. And the whole thing that I got a problem with is when we talk about exploitation within our community, all we're talking about, whether it's those two women having their breasts fondled, whether it's girls in a music video, whether it's rappers who are trying to get on and they're talking about nigga this and nigga that, we're talking about asymmetrical power. You're in a situation where you're disempowered and you feel that you have to do what you have to do in order to get empowered, right? In order to get some sense of equality or in order just to get by. Yeah. So, you know, I must say to the brother that he mentioned Louis Farrakhan, one of the things I love about the minister is he deals with the problem from a top level down. We can disagree on politics or this, that, and the third, but he's right. If you don't have a community, if you don't have your own, then you're completely in a state of disempowerment.
Yeah.
Right? And you're always going to have this asymmetric relationship with the majority, whether it be white or increasingly in Africa, Asian. Right? So you got to focus on building your own community.
So then, like, for me, I'm wondering then, like, as far as protection wise, like, how do we basically then get to protect our women from exploitation? Because I mean, it's seeming that it's a big business, like exploiting, like it's a big business that's making like a lot of money.
Yeah, you ever see the video with the guy who's on the train in the UK, and this guy starts to scream at this woman. It's in the UK. Actually no, I think it was in the States. This guy starts screaming at this black woman, and out of nowhere, brothers just started coming up, and it was just all fists. Right? That's how you empower your women. That's how you stand behind them. You know what I mean? Drop the camera, as the brother said. Drop the camera and muscle up. Right?
That's right. That's right. We got to hold ourselves accountable, man. I believe that's the root of it. It definitely starts at the home. It can't be an outer problem. It has to be an inner problem. It has to be introspect done. A lot of us don't like to do it. You know, it's a saying, I believe, that the successful person never wants to admit their shortcomings. But you know, it has to be done at home. And if we're not willing to look at that little girl like our daughter or our sister, then the problem won't change. And you know you know, we have to take on that. It was the attitude of the village raising a child. Somehow we've gotten away from that. Where you're afraid to say anything to the children because they might curse you out, and on top of that, the parents might have cost you too. But it's the thing is that we have to be fearless. And this is what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talked about when he talked about 10,000 fearless and justice or else. This is not for the Nation of Islam to do. This is not for the Black Panther Party, for the Comedics, but this is not for any particular group. This is a unified effort. We don't all have to think alike. You know, unity is not uniformity. But we do have to get some things on the table and understood that we're being assaulted. Our women are being exploited because we are allowing that. And you got to grow a set, for lack of better words. You know, that's what it comes down to. You got to tell your brother. You got to tell your sister, look, I don't agree. So that's where I'm at with that.
I don't know.
What do you think, LA? Because I mean, I hear, and don't get me wrong, everything the men have said have been amazing, but I always ask from the perspective of, have you asked a woman how she wants to be protected? Because you can give your answers and they are beautiful and they are wrapped up in a gorgeous present, but if she's not there, she don't care. So does that work for you, LA?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think what's happening is I guess it's that mansplaining that people are talking about, where men are getting to define what it is that is best for the woman, which, you know, this is where I feel that tension between white feminism and black feminism. And people, I seem like a contradiction in this way, in the sense that I do believe that there's a certain place that women can hold in a home to help make a black family become very successful. And it's different than the idea of replacing the white male by taking his spot and becoming empowered. I do believe that we need to support one another, and that has to be a conversation, like you're saying, Shannon. But there's a whole psychological exploitation that takes place, one that we've internalized, that we do to ourselves, that I think a lot of black men have an unconscious bias about. They're kind of unknowing to what it is that they do to help further facilitate how we feel and see ourselves. Even though it's just like, I'm not looking to Google to explain who I am, I'm not looking to the black man to explain who I am either. But if I say something like, were you gonna say something?
No, I said that part.
Yeah. When I think about, I'm not looking to them to explain who I am. It's just really difficult to understand who I am on my own without decolonizing and stripping myself of how I'm supposed to think. I don't have an idea that's presented to me as an option, I would say. And I think a lot of black women, are you leaving, Boogie? I think that a lot of black women are suffering because when I say something like, let me see, black women are treated really, really badly. Black men want to talk about how bad they're treated. And then it becomes the oppression Olympics around who's treated worse. But so right away, as a male voice, it again silences my voice from my experience. We all have bad experiences. But if the topic is around my experience, maybe not use that opportunity to then, you know, replace my experience with what's happening for you. If the topic is about me and what I'm going through, just like when we have a lot of white males come into the room and they start to share their experience while we're in the middle of talking about what's happening to black people, it's a similar kind of thing where it's like, we get it. We understand that we're all victims to white supremacy. Some people are better off in that situation than others. I don't know. I want to be able to get along with my brothers, but I feel like there's a psychological aspect that's not getting teased out. Okay, I know you're burning to say something because you gotta go.
No, I'm sorry to that.
There's just a conversation that needs to be had. I mean, the conversation started with us talking about exploitation of black women, and yet we've circled around the black family and what men should do and all these other different topics. Not that they're not important, because they are, but that wasn't the topic. And so you have to begin to unpack, why do we do what we do? Why bring in all these other things? Not that they, again, not important, but we have to focus on something and make that the main thing and unpack that first. Because if we just keep piling all these other issues, which they all lay on the table together, then we're never going to get one issue solved, because we're all going to be like, oh, well, let's pull this one out, and let's pull this one out, and let's pull this one out. So like you said, your voice is silenced. Your opinions don't matter. Your validity in the fight is null and void, because remember, we have all these other issues within our plight that are equally as important. Instead of saying, I hear you, my sister, and I understand you, and what you're saying is valid and important. Mm-hmm. And yes, women are exploited at a rate that's exponential. And not that it's not equal to Black men, but we're not talking about them. We're not talking about him. We're talking about you. And so we honor you and we value you and we stand here with you and we support you in however you need to be supported so that we can prevent it from happening further. Mm-hmm. That's the conversation that sometimes needs to be had that just isn't. And it may be implied because your brother sits next to you. Mm-hmm. But until it's felt, you can imply all you want.
Yeah, there's this kind of co-option between this idea of patriarchy really plays itself out. And I know people don't like to talk about intersectionality and things like that because the way that they take up intersectionality isn't exactly what I even mean when I'm saying it. I'm not talking about all of the different isms that exist within my experience. Mm-hmm. I'm just talking about being a Black woman and how nuanced and intersected that is without bringing in trans women and gay this and ability that. I'm just talking about Black women in and of itself. Hottentot Venus, there was no intersection. It was just about her body parts and what she represented. And people prodded and poked at this woman because they saw her as an object. And what's that?
A freak show.
A freak show. And I think that kind of narrative has, although twisted and turned, it still kind of exists. And if you're not trying to think about the experience of a Black woman from understanding that to what it must feel like, you know, I'm often put in a place where I need to understand the hypersexualization of Black men and white women wanting these men. But there's some kind of allure to that in the sense that patriarchy makes that kind of like a good look. If a lot of women want me, it's a place where people can stay in that space, and it's kind of, I don't know, kind of sick way of looking at yourself. But for Black women, it just seems problematized for me that my existence has always been one of objectification. And I think that it's similar to Black men, but it's different because I'm a woman. And patriarchy also takes up a space there. And how that plays out for me, let's say I'm in terms of, you know, choosing a mate and what's available to me when I'm looking at who am I going to align myself with if I'm a heterosexual Black female and I want to be with a heterosexual Black male, what are the options available to me? Is he able to understand what it is that I need from him in terms of just being a person first? What are his values? Because I've often seen the men, you know, giving each other daps when they're talking about a Black woman. You know, they're highlighting the aspects that we get exploited for amongst themselves. And so we're aware of that. It's not foreign to us. We hear ourselves talked about all the time, and we're not spoken to in the sense of trying to understand. And if there are any Black women that are just watching that want to grab this spot, because it's difficult to have this conversation to be heard and to be understood when nobody wants to talk about it. And if Black women are willing to show up, we don't want to penalize them for showing up. We're happy that they're showing up. But if we're saying that we want to be heard, then it's up to us to speak for them to hear. And if they are showing up, I'm down to have the conversation with them. But I want them to understand, for me personally, that I have an experience being a Black woman that is really difficult to explain. It's really difficult to explain in that I feel that I'm undermined. I feel like I'm made to feel like I'm either really angry or I'm overly emotional. And I have to tease through all of those things just to show up in the world and still present in a particular way that allows me to still feel, you know, desired, because a woman wants to still feel desired. Just because I want respect doesn't mean that I don't want to be desired. So the man might feel like, well, damn, I don't know what to do. How do I desire you and still respect you at the same time? And I think that's that lens of patriarchy. That's that understanding of ourselves through the oppressor. How do we start to get to know one another for who we are as people?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm struggling with. What's the matter, Kinte?
Toxic manhood. Come on, Dre.
It exists.
What is toxic manhood? Can somebody break that down for me?
Dre, I gotta call you out on that one.
Hates that term.
Toxic manhood.
Why you don't like it, Kente?
Dre, can you come in and explain?
Please, okay. Dre.
He's here. That's the same guy. Oh, I hope it works because I've heard this term, this toxic manhood, toxic and I don't really
and all that.
Yeah, I don't really understand what that is.
I can tell you what Google says.
Ooh, look at the haircut.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that, Dre.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, real quick, based on what she was describing, she has some. There's some truth into what she was saying.
Who's she?
L.A.
Oh my God!
Sorry, based on what you were saying,
in the room.
Sorry, L.A. All right. Now, what she was saying is, and I could be wrong. I'm listening. She was saying that that there's a line between how a woman is viewed as respectful and how a woman is viewed as desirable, right? And sometimes men cannot differentiate the two, or they can't mix the two. So they see somebody that they desire, but they may not be able to respect them. And vice versa. There's this woman that they respect, but they don't desire her. I'll give you an example. Oprah, people respect, but they may not desire her the same way they would desire Halle Berry. Understand what I'm saying? So I think in what she was saying when it comes to toxic manhood, and by the way, I'm not saying every man out there is toxic. Toxic masculinity, a toxic manhood, is a learned behavior. It's stuff that they're exposed to that causes them to act out a certain way, treat women a certain way. So we can say that we don't like that term. If we don't like that term, we don't want to be self-reflective about it. And that's the actual truth.
Yep.
So we got to be able to say it does exist because we see it. If we look into ourselves, we probably have been proponents of it, but sometimes we don't want to be self-reflective. Sometimes we don't want to say I was a part of the problem at one point, or I could be part of the problem. Like if I was to look at LA and see only her physical and think she was beautiful, right? Some guys will look and just be motivated by that alone, right? But then when they realize she got a brain, then it's like,
oh wow.
She has a mind that she could think for herself and she's intelligent. Then it's like, yeah, I don't know anymore, you know? And that's learned behavior, and that does exist. So we may not like that term, but it exists.
Dre, I love Dre. Dre is a great dude. I always say this. I always feel like a scumbag when I listen to Dre because I'm not as nice as Dre. You're a great dude. You're a really good dude, man. And I aspire to be a better human being. I guess I'm just not that guy.
You're good, bro. You're good. Well, even though you don't realize it.
I'm a sleazeball.
You're much better than you. Hey, by the way, how was church today?
I was at church too, by the way.
I know. See? You're a good brother.
Okay, Shannon is saying hegemonic masculinity is defined as a practice that legitimizes powerful men's dominant position in society and justifies the subordination of the common male population and women and other marginalized ways of being a man. Textbook definition, Shannon. Thank you for sharing with us.
I hate that term, and one of the great ambassadors of this toxic masculinity thing is Terry Crews, who he does all these speeches about ending toxic masculinity and all that. I think they're trying to get rid of masculinity, period. Men and women are not the same. We don't think the same way. We're different. Things that float our boat is different. Things that you guys value, generally we don't value this in the same way. And sometimes they make just things that just come with manhood as it's toxic. No, it's being a freaking man who's not who doesn't wear a merce, who doesn't prance around like like a real man, And yes, you can quote unquote say it's toxic if there's certain aspects that you can be. I don't put that with masculinity. Just a guy who beats his wife, that's not masculine at all. That's not a masculine thing. To me, that's the opposite of that. So when you say toxic masculinity, I don't like those two words put together, because true masculinity is not toxic. And I don't think you should put those two together. Sometimes masculinity, period, is considered toxic. And it seems like that's what they're trying to get rid of, especially with brothers. They're trying to discontinue masculine brothers, like it's a model that they're trying to rub out. And to be honest with you, you don't want masculine black men to go away, because what'll happen is once they're gone, good luck. Okay, you need warriors. They're trying to get rid of the warriors, and we need to get out of this thing about where we trying to decrease the warrior class and make every brother cute and cuddly. You know?
Can I throw something in here? I appreciate, first of all, I'm in agreement with you real quick that there's toxicity and there's toxic human behavior, right? Period. And I don't like this branding of toxic masculinity. You're right. There is an agenda to criminalize and how should I say, to create this sort of stigma that, as you're 100% right, that masculinity in and of itself is in many ways negative. And it starts when our sons are young, when they're running around in the classroom and they're getting pushed to drugs because they got to calm down. It starts early, right? That things that are inherently male traits and behaviors are wrong. However, let's double back and go back to what LA was saying with this conversation. So this is an issue about objectification of and the connection, the whole business of the feminine, right? And so I just want to make sure that, because I've learned a lot from my dialogues with LA over the years, where I don't want this to devolve back into a conversation about masculinity. Perhaps we can get into that next week. But can we just stay focused again on what's going on for Black women? Because, and so if there's any women that are in the room,
I mean, unless we only exist in relation to the men in our lives.
Well, that's the yin and yang thing.
Yeah, I mean, light only can be seen because of darkness, and darkness exists because of lightness. Does the Black woman show up because of Black men, and vice versa? That, I mean, is that what we're trying to say here? Go ahead, Dre.
I am a product of Gloria and Vernon, but at the end of the day, I am a woman.
So what is it that you want people to understand? But just before you say that, Tanya said a good example of this is when men marry women they respect, but step out to be intimate with another, with the more promiscuous woman.
A woman they desire.
A woman they desire.
Who plays a very significant role?
Who does, you said?
She plays a significant role.
The woman that's desirable?
Yeah, the side woman or whatever.
The desired woman is playing a significant role in having the man step out on his wife?
No, I'm just saying that I was just saying don't discount side women.
What?
So we should give her a cookie, is what you're saying.
Right. Don't discount.
Mute him, LA. Mute him.
Man, I don't even understand what he's saying. Women, yes, women do it too. Concubines need love too. Ha. Like, see, it becomes a joke, right?
It's a joke. It's not.
And so this is how we don't know how to show up to be heard. We don't know how to show up to be seen. And so we take on the tropes. We become the Val types of either the mammy or the concubine, or we try to align ourselves with the white respectability because we're more likely to find a man to become, somebody's wife, if that's what we're going for. Where can a woman just be? I mean, everybody just needs to just be. It's not a Black male or a Black female thing. But I feel as though there's a little bit more agency, and I could be wrong, in terms of a man. Because of patriarchy, there's a place where a man can stand, and that becomes who he is. Whereas the Black woman, she almost has to decide who she's going to be in that scenario. And she is mostly deciding based on her subsistence. So it's like, okay, I guess here I am. I'm a 45-year-old woman. I'm divorced. I would really like to be able to find someone to have as a companion, to grow with and do all of these things. But I have no idea how to engage a man at this stage without showing up as one of these things that they objectify me to be. I'm either going to be, because most of the men I marry or meet are married, or they're too young and they want to start a family. Like I don't have much to go with. So it's like whatever he defines for me almost is like what I get to choose. So I get to choose whatever the man is defining for me. Whereas I would like to be able to define for myself and then go out there and find a man who was also looking for me to show up in the way that I want to show up in the world. I'm just not sure. It's so
that's what I mean by you're looking for purpose alignment. You're looking for somebody who sees your purpose and aligns with it, not subtracts from it, not diminishes who you are and degrades your worth. Someone who sees you as an equal in a partnership and not just subservient.
But they get to define those rules, right? So if I'm trying to be with you, Kinte, and you decide that girls sit down, you good. You know, it's kind of like, okay, if I'm lonely enough, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna sit down and be quiet. Or if I'm with Dre and he's like, yo, I want you to come over here and sit that ass down and blah blah blah. So then maybe it's like, okay, if I'm lonely enough, maybe that's what I'm gonna. I have to compromise, maybe who I am.
But that's what you said. If you're lonely enough.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it.
How are you saying no when the 3 women on this board right here are saying yes? That's like conscious bias that I'm talking about.
It's not about what
we're saying.
LA.
You can't just say no when 3 women are here saying yes.
God.
How can you do that? No. So that's what shuts us down, and we just follow along.
I think that when you're in a state of want of anything, whether it be companionship, and I do want to open the floor back again to the exploitation question, but whether it be a state of companionship or economic want or whatever, you're more susceptible to be at effect by the third party or the other individual. So let's be honest, that I think that there's merit to what, not just merit, but what LA is saying is very, very true. People bend themselves into pretzels in order to find the right relationship, but it depends on circumstance, age, economics, loneliness, family history, family support. You start removing some of those pillars, and all of a sudden, a person's they're less stable and less able to have that agency where they feel that they can really define themselves because they're, as I said, at effect by their surroundings or their lack of support. But again, so then we start talking, let's go back again to the whole business of exploitation. So it is easier to exploit somebody. Like, I'll give you an example. I'm not going to name names, but there's a young lady that's in my life who has, and I've noticed since she was a very young girl, recently found out that she's in the adult industry, in the sex trade. And I just think about how her life has been affected by not having family support, not having good, solid male role models, not having great relationship with her mother. And how all of that, and I'm not even going to racialize it. I'm just going to say that it's sort of her destination is almost inevitable because of the way her life has been structured, right? So how do we find, like, I don't want to take away from the ladies here in this conversation.
That's where you have to enter the conversation when we start talking about protection and the things that how men can show up for women.
Right.
It's from understanding from where you just entered the conversation.
Right.
Or back to the Sarah Bartman, right? It seems like there's going to be exploitation somehow, some way, right? So I'm going to turn it back to what you were saying, LA. So with her, she's like, okay, if there's going to be exploitation, I'm about to get something out of it. Or how women do it today, I'm going to do things on my terms. If this man's going to want this, I'll be willing to give it to it. He'll get what he wants, but it has to be on my terms, which is probably why we have the women that we see on these shows like Real Housewives and stuff like that, because now it's a point where it seems like women will be exploited. And if that's the case, then we're going to be exploited the way I want to be exploited. I am going to do what I need to do for me to get what I can out of it if there's going to be exploitation anyway. So as you was in that example that you was given, LA, if a guy, tells you come over and sit it on him or whatever, and if you're lonely and you're willing to do it because you're lonely, the woman who says, okay, if I'm going to be exploited, all right, I am going to be like, okay, I will. But what I need you to do is when I get there, I need dinner. All right, I need a bath. Also, these shoes that I like, these red bottoms. So make sure you have your credit card or debit card ready because we're about to go online, get those, and then we can do whatever we need to do.
But you see, so it's economic, man. It's economic. Have you guys heard of this thing, sugar babies and sugar daddies?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't even know
the term. Yeah. Work for tuition.
Yeah, I mean, it's
pay my school bills.
Yeah.
So it seems like then I have a question: is exploitation unavoidable?
Wherever there's asymmetric power between male and female, it's almost an inevitability, and it's not racial. There is a racial component to it, but it's not necessarily racialized. It's just men dominate money.
Yeah, I think race just problematizes it. It adds to it because of our historical experience on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so you're right. And so I just want to say something. So let's go back to why I think some of us guys started to get into the conversation the way we did is because we, as a black man, we're interacting with black women from a very similar economic place. Yeah. We both are in a state of lack, right? Yes. So if we're both lacking, we have to uplift each other. And so how do we do that? How does a black man show up? So let's go back to the picture of the Asian man holding the breasts of those two women. You're gonna tell me there was no men in that picture? There was no men around? There's probably a man holding the camera taking the picture, right? But he's in a state of lack. He's not capable of standing up to the wealthy Chinese tourists. So that's where we come, because we feel disempowered. And so maybe that's where we start to hijack the conversation, because we feel like, again, that state of disempowerment, because we're the ones who, we want to stand up for our women. Some of us, not everybody. There's some guys who don't really care. But for those who do want to, we feel like we need to. Anyways, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kente.
So you said that when you want to have these conversations, the women want to talk, and then the men come in and all of that. It's like, I thought it was a dialogue. Like you can't have the dialogue just with women. In order to make this thing work, black men and black women have to have a dialogue with each other. And what's going to come with it is not always like, you know what, you're right. You're 100% right. Everything you say is right. No, that's disingenuous. When you have a dialogue, I'm not going to always agree. Now, some of the things might be from the point of view of, I'm not a woman, so I don't have the experiences of a woman. The only thing I can speak of is from a man's point of view who's dealt with many women and what I believe. So if you want to have these conversations where you just want men or people to listen, then, what's going to come out of that? You want a dialogue. I
never said that. I actually said to Fax, I said, that's the place where you enter the conversation, is in showing me that you're actually hearing what I have to say, trying to understand my position, and then let's enter into a conversation from there. But if you just come to the conversation and already feel like you have something to add before you even know what I'm dealing with, then you're going to have a breakdown in communication. You're going to be fixing a problem that I might not need fixing. And that's when we feel like we've lost our agency.
I'm talking about once we've listened to what you're talking about, and then we want to then add from our perspective of where we're coming from, why we may act the way that we do, or what we agree or don't agree with. I think it's all valid. So you're assuming we're not listening. We are listening, and we've had these conversations with many black women. So I don't think we're the bad guys here.
I don't think it's about good guys or bad guys. I don't think it's like that. I think that what I hear you saying is that you have an experience and that you are coming into the conversation. You want to have a dialogue that both includes the woman's experience, but you also want to be able to add yours so that we can have a combined understanding in order to move forward. Would that be right, Kente?
Yes, because...
Okay, so wait. So right there, you feel heard and understood, and you feel validated in what your experiences have been in this conversation. What I'm saying is this little dialogue between you and I right there, where I summarized what you had to say and then asked you if that's what you were trying to say. And now I'm engaging you around that point. That's all I'm saying that we're looking for as Black women. I need to hear that too, because everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to feel like their feelings matter. And so if you do that in the conversation, then it can actually have a really great outcome, instead of it being about men versus women and polarization of our experiences.
But I know what you're referring to, and you kind of miscast what you said. You didn't say, no, you did not say, no, I'm talking about, you didn't say that Black women have these problems. You said that Black women are more, so you started that one when you said Black women are more hated on or whatever. We're talking about like from 2 weeks ago, whatever. I think that's what you were referring to, because you brought it up just what.
I'm not talking about 2 weeks. I'm talking about
no. You said that, no, you brought this up like what, a day ago or something like that when we had that conversation. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm talking about this conversation. I'm not talking about a private conversation that we had offline. That's crazy. And now when we're talking about it, we're able to, put together the best way to communicate with one another. If I even spoke to you at 3:45 and had that conversation with you, but we've now explained between 4 and this time now a better way of communicating, why would you bring up 3:45? I'm talking about right now. Right now is what we're learning, that in this moment, it's better to engage the conversation from understanding where the other person is coming from. That's what I'm saying right now. This is what I've learned as a result of this conversation. But I don't know what you mean by what I was saying 2 weeks ago about Black women. What did you say I said? Black women what?
It's irrelevant.
Okay. It's irrelevant.
And that's what we do. Why do we do that? Like, it's like we never want to even finish the conversation, and even the level of understanding amongst ourselves, it's not irrelevant because it was brought up. But that's a coping mechanism.
May I offer something? I'm the headless man, and y'all get to see me. But when you come to LA's house, you see me. I'm always here. Here's something I want to offer, that sometimes when men and women have these types of conversations, it's about a willingness to sometimes give space to just hear what the other person is saying on both sides. LA and I can probably remember an eventful conversation that was had about maybe a year ago, wasn't it? At Jack Astor's restaurant. Yo, Jack Astor's was lit up that day. And what it came down to was that sometimes there's little discrete points that somebody's trying to make, and they're trying to say something, but they don't have the words right in that moment. And what I've really tried to learn in this past year in my development is to just give the space, jot it down, and maybe check in with them later and say, this is what I understood you to say. Am I correct? And as a man, and this has nothing to do with toxic masculinity, by the way, but just as a man, we're not often taught. Like my stepdad used to grunt at me. I think I probably said 14 words to him in 45 years. So I didn't learn how to communicate from the males in my life. But sometimes it's very, so for the women that sometimes you communicate with men and you think we're not hearing you, be patient. And for us men, sometimes it's like, you know what? We have to also back off for a second and say, all right, there's something to be learned here. Maybe they're not getting, because men are very linear, I think, sometimes in the way we talk, whereas women sort of and I don't want to generalize, but oftentimes in my experiences, women are much more capable of moving around in a topic before getting to where they want to, the ultimate destination. And you needed to find the little breadcrumbs along the journey to really find what they were trying to say. And that's, for some men, a very difficult issue, a very difficult thing to do.
You seem very reflective there.
Yeah, I am right now.
That was good fact.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I don't understand that what we're saying is different, because what I try to model in this conversation with you, Kinte, is that I was listening to what you had to say. I summarized what you had to say, and I asked you if it was correct. And then all I was trying to get at is that this is where we need to engage one another. We need to hear what the person is saying, summarize it, and ask them if we're getting it right, so that we can engage in a conversation.
Yeah, I think, and that's a great way. That's how I think most conversations should be had. You know, but when we ask that, is that what I hear? We got to give space for the person to answer that. And if they answer it, and if it's contrary to what we said, if it's contrary to what we summarize, then you got to give that person an opportunity to say, no, let me explain further, and then give further. I don't think Kente had the opportunity to do that.
So please do, because we wanted to walk away. Sorry, Shannon, go ahead.
But he shook his head yes and said yes. His eyes got, and she asked, "Is that what you were saying?" And he said, shook his head yes, unless it's not the universal yes anymore, and said yes.
So when guys do this,
his mind. He
has to do this.
His mind.
Body language. When guys do this, because I do this a lot too. All right, I'll shake my head, and it's because I'm listening and I'm taking it in. It's not necessarily saying that I agree with what's being said. I'm taking it in, and I guess it's a lot like what Fax was saying. Like guys, it can be very linear when they listen, and they're receiving all this information and what they're doing is they're processing it in hopes to have an appropriate response afterwards. Okay, that speaks directly to the point. And I'm not sure if Kente had the opportunity to completely answer that.
No.
Walked away from the opportunity, and that was frustrating for me.
How did I walk away from the opportunity?
I want to hear what you have to say, and then you say, "No, forget it."
No, I didn't walk away from the opportunity at all. I mean, you said, I forgot what you said. You said something, and I was like, then you said, "Oh, this is not about what 2 weeks and all of that," and I'm like, okay, if we're starting there, then I mean, what is, like you said something early on in the show, and I was basically referencing what you said early on, which kind of related to what was said in that show 2 weeks ago. And you were basically saying that when you said that Black women, you changed your wording around and said that what you said was that Black women are also harmed, or I can't remember exactly what it was, but and then I was basically bringing that up because that's not what you said before. That was the only thing that I had a thing about, was that's not what the wording that you used, and that's why I brought it up. I wouldn't have brought it up. I wouldn't have brought it up if it wasn't for that point that you had made. And the thing is, because you're saying that we turn into the oppression Olympics or whatever and all of that, you know, no, it's not even about that. There's no, like, it's like no one has a better seat on the Titanic. You know, we're all going to the iceberg. So we as Black men and women have to figure out a way to help each other. And we have to listen to each other. That's true. But then we also, at the end of the day, have to agree that we're in it together. And as a community, what are we going to do to push forward?
Do you feel complete with what you're saying?
Sure.
Shannon just wrote, she read the quote I posted from Malcolm X about Black women being the most disrespected. And that's what I referenced, I guess it was 2 weeks ago. I don't know when it was, but in one of the shows where that was the case. And then you actually came out of the chat room and didn't want to be a part of the conversation anymore.
No, that's not what happened.
Oh, okay. What happened?
That is what happened. That isn't, but I don't even, like I said, it's irrelevant now.
I use my life as an example to learn how to do it, because if you and I can't have a conversation, then how can we expect other people to have a conversation?
We are having a conversation. We are having a conversation.
Okay, I feel like this is getting semantical. I'm just talking about the fact that you and I are having a misunderstanding, and that it serves as a great example as to where things go wrong when men and women are talking to one another. So you have an understanding about something that happened 2 weeks ago, and I have an understanding that seemed to be at odds with one another. I read Shannon put a quote up, I read it, you had a reaction to it. I questioned that reaction, and you came out of the chat room. I don't know why you came out of it. Okay, so if that's not what happened, what happened?
No, you had went on this, you were talking about Black women being the most disrespected, right? And I wasn't going to disagree with Black women not being disrespected. That's silly. Obviously, Black women are being disrespected. I started to talk, and you perceived what I was saying as in conflict to what I was saying. And before I could even get a sentence out, then I got attacked from both of you guys. So instead of continuing when I'm not even being, when I'm not even talking, so I just said, well, okay, I'm just going to sit back and let the conversation unfold.
Do you feel it?
Can I jump in?
Did you feel attacked in this conversation?
No, I'm just saying, like,
I don't reference what I'm doing as attacking you. I'm just talking, and this is part of what this is what I mean by showing up as a Black woman. I'm angry. I'm doing something. I'm talking, and I've never spoken any different than how I'm speaking right now. So I don't know why you're perceiving that as attacking you.
May I throw something in as a sort of not a referee here, but just an arbiter watching both sides? Is that correct me if I'm wrong, Kente, but earlier on when we were discussing things, and the issue came up about Black men needing perhaps to listen more and sort of take more of a backseat in this dialogue, and how it sort of felt like, how should I say, was the feeling that in some way the men were hijacking the conversation? And I just want to get to some quick yes or no. So was the feeling that in some way it felt like Ellie was sort of getting at that we were hijacking the conversation?
I never got
no,
that.
I'm not saying
Shannon
you said.
was the one that brought it.
No, I'm not saying you said that. I'm just going. I'm trying to use all sides of my brain.
I understand, but I'm just saying that Shannon brought it up.
Yes.
That for her, we needed to keep on top of the conversation for what the topic was.
Agreed.
LA didn't say that.
Okay,
LA
fair.
is the one trying to hear what everybody has to say.
Fair.
So I typically take that position
fair.
When I'm talking to people. So when I'm then told that I am attacking somebody, when really all I'm doing is trying to facilitate a conversation, then how is it that I could show up so that it feels better for you? Because I'm hearing that you feel a particular way.
No, I don't. Here's the funny thing is, no, you're okay. The only reason why.
Wait a minute. Hear him out. Let's hear him out.
See what I mean? All right. So
wait, stop. Wait, let me just say this. We have to. We're very concerned about perceptions and how, particularly and about the conversation, how Black women are exploited and how Black women are perceived. All right. Yeah. Kente's trying to respond, and there's automatic excitement instead of just letting him finish. Let him finish, and then we can respond. So, and I'm not saying that anybody's looking like an angry person anywhere, but I think that perception could be that if you get excited while he's responding, so let's give everybody space to just talk.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I love Dre. Dre's a great dude.
No, I mean, no, it's only fair.
The only reason why I brought that up was a day ago you brought it up. I had forgot. I mean, honestly, I had forgotten that even happened because it wasn't that big of a deal to me. So the perception, like you brought it up, like it was like this real painful thing, and I'm like, I had to remember what you were talking about. So that's why I was like, kind of like when you brought it up, I was like, I had to actually think about what had happened. So it wasn't that. It was in that moment when I actually thought about it, I was trying, like I was about to say something, and before I could even say something, then it was like, oh, so then it was just like, okay, well then I'm gonna just take myself out of it so that so
Kente. I have a question because I've been having a question.
Hold on, Shannon. I gotta hear what Dre's about to say.
All right, so Kente, do you tend to withdraw when people do get excited when you say something in response to what you say.
No, not really. Normally,
why I have.
Okay. Normally I don't. But one thing was out of respect for this is not my platform. I didn't want to get into a back and forth with the host of the show. So, and I didn't see it as being important for me to do that. So that's one of the reasons why I just said, well, let me not,
Can I talk?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so what I heard earlier, and then I'm gonna ask my question, is that you felt like we attacked you. So I'm gonna ask a question and then I'm gonna make a statement, and I'm gonna give room to the question. So this happened allegedly 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
How many times since then have you talked to myself or LA?
I don't know, what, 2, 3 times?
Okay, so you talked to one of us 2 or 3 times?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I'm asking that question is because for us, as you can tell, not ago that you felt attacked, and I know you and I are co-hosts. Listen, no, I'm just referencing what you said. Not saying that right now it's right or wrong. I just want to acknowledge it because 1, I consider you my friend first. 2, you are my co-host and I see and talk to you on a regular. You ask me what's wrong. You ask me what's going on. We talk about shit. So at the end of the day, if you felt attacked, I want to own it was never my intention.
Wait a minute. You missed the whole point of what I said. I didn't even think about it. I never thought about it again. It was only because I brought it up. Like yesterday or the day before. I can't remember when that was. I didn't care. It was like,
listen, you're not giving me the room to say what I need to say because I'm acknowledging what you already said. The point I'm making, that is what I want you to realize. The point I'm making is because that is what you said, you felt attacked. I was unaware that you felt attacked. And we talked multiple times since then. Of course, you just said it was just brought to your cognizance from this conversation. So I'm acknowledging it because that's what we should do because we're friends. I'm acknowledging that you felt attacked in that moment. That was never my intention.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't have used the word attack. It wasn't that serious. Like, I don't want it to sound like I was in a ball crying. Like, that's silly. It wasn't like an attack. Like I wasn't attacked. Like I wasn't like, mugged in the street corner. I'm just saying that the minute I started talking, then it was like all this flood of conversation. So that's why I said, well, okay, this is going into a weird place that I don't want to actually be in. So that's why I bowed out. I didn't even think about it no more. It wasn't a thing to me. Like, this is not
until now.
2 weeks ago.
No, but it was only not to now. It was because LA brought it up. We had a conversation and she brought it up as like it was this thing that I didn't even know about.
Okay, wait, please, because I hate being summarized and spoken for. When I am bringing it up, I'm trying to bring up the fact that Black men and Black women have problems having conversations, and that when they often retreat out of a conversation, it doesn't allow for it to get resolved. And this is a clear example that it wasn't ever resolved for something that didn't mean anything. It's sure having quite an impact in this room. And you can open your eyes and be like, what? But it is. And maybe not for you, and that's fine. But there's other people that are experiencing it, not just you and I, that it's affecting and impacting. And that's all I'm trying to bring light to is we need to have better ways of communicating so that we can work together to save the Black family, to even have a Black family, to be able to do things in our community that is going to move us forward. But if we can't have hard conversations that may be insignificant to you, but significant to someone else, then that's where the problem is, because Black women often feel like their experience is insignificant and we're trying to prove it to have a real conversation. So while something that we spoke about 2 weeks ago, an hour ago, a day ago, is having a response from people, it's important to hear that I may have been hurt, even though you weren't, and to address that hurt and not just act like I don't care. It's who cares? It didn't even mean anything to me, because that in and of itself is also damaging to the being able to heal past a certain situation.
I think that that's a great example. Like great example. Like what this is residual of. This is the residual effects of like a situation that wasn't complete, and now it's trying to. It seems like it's the universe is trying to wrap it up right now, and this is actually a really good conversation. Really good conversation. And again, this just what happened 2 weeks ago wasn't closed, and that was still open, and now maybe this will be an opportunity for it to be closed.
And while the two people that are being objectified in the conversation, or the three people that are being objectified in the conversation might feel awful, we're also learning how to communicate. And for me, this is the 1000% reason why I want the elephant room to be something that is happening. Because this is where we want to show an example of what it is. These are hard conversations. They are taboo conversations. Sometimes it's unspoken. But this is where the beauty of it is. This is if we can actually get over ourselves to a place of empathy and love, then that's how we're going to start to heal our community. And with that, I'm going to just close out the elephant room and thank everybody for tuning in. I know Black people don't like to air out their dirty laundry in front of people, but this was something that was necessary. Kinte, I appreciate you staying in the room and speaking with me, Shannon, for your input, Dre, for your mediation, for facts, and everybody else who participated. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you next Sunday at 4. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.